Pecha Kucha 304, Luthor and Superman Red Sun. So I'm spent most of the week recovering from stomach problems. I was hoping to get to the library earlier, read something that I don't currently own. Ironically, both of the books I'm talking about this week are books I read in the library and bought after the fact because they were so good, which is the benefit of going to the library and reading these books. And they're both Superman books, and they're both two of the best Superman books ever written because they're not about Superman. They're about Lex Luthor. Starting with Luthor, written by Brian Azzarello and drawn by Lee Bermejo, who also, that's the team behind the Joker book I have. And it's beautiful the way this is written and drawn. Luthor is a normal person, as normal as you can be in a superhero comic book. He's a genius, but what makes him so dangerous, according to Luthor, is he's an idealist. The story is about him and his belief that Superman makes the world a worse place by giving people the impression that they don't have to be masters of their own destiny and they don't have to pay the price that he chooses to pay, Luthor, in being excellent in the truest sense of the word. There's no grand overview over this. I'm trying to keep the specific description of each of these books short for a change, but it goes without saying it's a great book to look at. It's also a great book to read. It's fully enclosed as a story. You don't have to have any interest in Superman. That's the other thing both of these books have in common. You don't have to read any other books to get the value out of these books. Superman Red Sun is just a story about what if Superman was born in Russia instead of America, played out as far as Mark Miller, the writer, wants it to be. In this story, Lex Luthor is he's a genius to the level of farce. He almost single-handedly invents technology as we know it from, I'm not sure when it starts, in the 60s, the 70s, or the 80s. But, it's Lex Luthor as the last great hope of America and the free world versus the communist Superman who saves the world by doing what you expect him to do, stopping big things falling on innocent people, as well as creating a super communist ultra world where everybody is safe but nobody is free. In this version of events, Batman is Russian and rises to oppose the tyranny that is the regime that Superman ultimately runs. It's like everything in this book, it's delightful yet farcical. There's no reason that this Bruce Wayne isn't Bruce Wayne from Gotham. I don't know, it's just to fit him in the book. Batman's in both of these books just to help sell the books, and I highly recommend both books. I finally coloured this bison picture I've been working on for a couple of weeks. It had been done sooner if I wasn't sick, and I really like the lighting. I'll say no more. So this week I went through my 10-chapter manga story and just read it to see if it flowed properly, and there were some janky bits that I've kind of rewritten to be more in line with the first draft. Stuff got shaked around a lot as I tried to kind of switch who the focus of the plot was on. In many ways I still feel like this book doesn't have a main character. But nevertheless, it's going to be art direction concerns for the next week, so I can do a final draft of the plot that's all camera angles and actual plot elements. I mean, visual plot elements. I also saw a lot of cool stuff on the internet this week. Surprise, surprise. There's some meme going around with some person staring at someone breakdancing. I caught the Garfield version. I've caught a few other ones. It's nice when the algorithm recommends something you can just enjoy that's wholesome. Speaking of wholesome, Frankie Boyle popped into my queue. He makes offensive jokes. He's British. I like that sort of thing. I wonder if he can still get away with it. But it was nice to have something in my queue that made me laugh without having to feel guilty about it. And it, surprisingly enough, led me to a conversation between Stuart Lee and Alan Moore about a book that Stuart Lee was writing, about a bunch of newspaper columns Stuart Lee wrote that were maybe not entirely factually accurate, and how you satirize the news in a world where nothing really seems to be true anymore. Interesting food for thought. I also caught a bunch of movies on TV, which is a great panacea for me effectively having given up gaming. The Kingsman 2, not as good as the original, but entertaining enough. I watched it through. Very interesting fight choreography. Jackie Chan should have been credited in the credits. Assault on Precinct 13 from the 70s. A very bizarre movie directed by John Carpenter. He does a lot of horror movies that aren't what you'd think of as typical horror movies. Any movie from the 70s I catch on TV is worth watching just to see if it ends how I think it will. And yeah, it was worth watching through. Naked Gun 33 1/3. A spoof movie back when they were funny. Although I don't know if that's true because I'm laughing ironically a lot of these jokes because they're so silly. But you know what? Any laugh's a good laugh, right? I watched the whole thing through and I won't say I'd do it again. Airplane 2 is very much a thing in the same vein, except that it hit hard with so many edgy jokes that it burned me out by the end. William Shatner had to show up to kind of raise the goofball level back up. Yeah. I won't be making a habit of watching spoof movies, but what comes on, comes on. Farscape, The Peacekeeper Wars came on, and I didn't know what that was until I watched it. I was aware of what Farscape is. It's a science fiction show in the vein of Star Trek. I like this kind of stuff. I've caught random bits of Farscape in the past. The Peacekeeper Wars is the end of the series, made after the series was cancelled to tie up all the loose ends. And it's 3 hours long because it's 2 TV movies or something like that, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's all of this stuff is a very interesting way of me getting more ideas in my head that might be useful going forward without having to pay anyone for them, which is wonderful. So that's the end of this week's Pecha Kucha, and I will see you next time.